We're about to make some greeting cards using the free LibreOffice Draw program. The greeting cards will end up like this, with the front of the card, inside of the card, and the back. The question is, how can we do this and know which side is up after it's been folded? Well, here's the trick. We'll take a piece of paper and we'll fold it up the way we would like our greeting card to end up. And then on this piece of paper, we're going to write some words that remind us that this is the front page area. And this will be inside left, inside right. And then this will be the back of the card. And then when we unfold this, it will show us that when the front page area is right side up, the back page area will be right side up, but the two inside pages are upside down compared to these. So we're going to learn how in LibreOffice Draw we can flip the text 180 degrees so that when we fold the card, everything will be just the way we would like it. And once you learn a couple of tricks, you'll be able to use the free LibreOffice Draw program to create greeting cards that will amaze your friends. The video version of this tutorial follows very closely creating greeting cards, which is a tutorial available as a PDF file. And to locate that file, you can go to the Bristol Village website. The Bristol Village website can be found by entering BVRES for bristolvillageresidents.org. Once you're on the Bristol Village website, you can go to the Computer Club tab. The Computer Club page acts as a home page for many people. There are one-click access to quite a few functions and features. A lot of handy web links are available. But for this discussion, we have the Schoolhouse. And in the Schoolhouse, you'll see a number of tutorials listed. In particular, there are tutorials made specifically for LibreOffice version 6, and that's what we're using for this version of creating greeting cards. All of the illustrations in this tutorial were created using LibreOffice Draw version 6, running on a Windows 10 computer. In LibreOffice Draw, we've set the Galaxy tool options here. The way that's done is to go to the menu bar, select Tools, go down to Options, select View, and then from a list of different toolbar styles, select Galaxy. If you do that, your display will look more like the display used in the videos. And you see here is what is known as the Galaxy toolbar. When you start LibreOffice Draw, you may see this little area here that shows a thumbnail list of all the pages. Because our greeting card is really going to be made for one page or one piece of paper, we're going to turn that off. We can toggle it off, or we can select from the menu bar, View, Page Pane. And you notice that there's a check mark. That's a toggle. It's either on or off. You click once, it's on. You click again, and it's off. That gives us a little more space for our LibreOffice Draw greeting card. We need to plan ahead to see how our greeting card is going to be laid out. In this example, we're going to use a greeting card that uses a so-called portrait mode. In portrait mode, things are taller than they are wide once we fold this up. So in order to see how we can lay this out, we'll take a piece of paper, fold it horizontally, and then fold it vertically, and that will get our nice little booklet. While it's folded up, as you saw in the preview, we want to label each section. We want to label the front page, the back page, and the inside left and inside right pages. That way you can unfold it and you'll learn the orientation required for each part of the final greeting card. Now you could also use the same technique if you wanted to do a landscape mode card instead of a portrait mode card. I'm assuming that most viewers are not really familiar with the LibreOffice Draw program, so we're going to cover the basics of the program display. The very top horizontal line, like most Windows programs, is called the title bar, and there you'll see the name of the program and the file name of the current file you're working on. Initially, this will say Untitled 1, but you will change that when you save the file. Right below the title bar is the menu bar, and if you select on any of these lines on the menu bar, well, let me just not tell you, let me show you. In LibreOffice Draw, when we look at the menu bar, if we select, by the way, I have to remind myself to mention that in this context, select means to move the mouse pointer over something and press the left mouse button once. So I select the word File in the menu bar, and it opens up a long list of options. If I select Edit, I get a new list of options. You notice that some are gray and ghosted, some aren't available until they're needed. I have view options, and these view options are toggles. They can be turned on and off. If you see a little arrow on the right side of one of these pop-down lists, that means it's going to pop out yet another list. And in the case of toolbars, you have a long list of different toolbars that can be toggled on and off. And we have an Insert menu, we have a Format menu, we have a Tools menu, Modify, Window options, and of course, we have help available. Now, below the menu bar is the toolbar, and as I mentioned earlier, we have reset our toolbar to use the Galaxy style. On the left side of the display is this vertical column, which is a collection of drawing tools. There are tools for drawing lines, rectangles, all kinds of shapes. Right on top of that is a selection tool. If we select that tool and move the mouse pointer to a particular object, we can click the left mouse button to select that object. On the right side is this area called the Sidebar. And if that's not turned on your display, you need to turn it on. Let me show you how that works. Again, this is a sidebar. I'm going to go back to the menu bar and select View and find Sidebar. Right now it's toggled on. If I click on that, if I select that, it's now off. So if your display does not have the sidebar showing, you should go to View, Sidebar, and toggle it on. This sidebar has a lot of tools available, and they're lumped into different categories. There's a Properties, Style and Formatting, a Gallery. The Navigator is not so exciting, using the Draw program for greeting cards, but it's one of the options here available in the sidebar. The first tool we're going to use to get our greeting card started is the Text tool found on the toolbar. Let's add some text to this greeting card to get started. So from the toolbar, I'm going to select the Insert Text Box option. Notice that when you hover on a tool on the toolbar, if you don't recognize what that tool is for, just hover, pause for a little bit, and a little tool tip will pop out that will tell you, it'll give you a clue as to what the toolbar item does. One other thing I should point out about the mouse pointer. When I have the mouse pointer up in the title bar or the menu bar or the toolbar or in the sidebar, it looks like an arrow pointer. However, once I select a tool like the Insert Text Box tool and move the mouse pointer into the drawing area, it changes to a text cursor rather than the regular mouse pointer. I'm going to put this text cursor somewhere down near the lower right corner, and I'm going to click the left mouse button once. And that creates a little text box, not a very big text box because there's nothing entered in it yet. So I want to enter some words. I will type "a card from me." And once I'm done typing, once I'm done entering text, if I click the mouse pointer away from that, you'll see that The text remains, and that's all. If I move the mouse pointer over a text object, a couple of things happen. If I move it right into, wait a minute, it would be better if I zoomed in on this area a little bit. And that gives me the opportunity to talk about the zoom controls that are down here in the lower right corner of the LibreDraw window. You notice there's a little slider here. This little circle is a slider, and I can move that back and forth, and I can zoom in and out on the display. Now when I do that and the text gets larger, I'm not really changing the size of the text. I'm only changing the view of that text. I also have these scroll bars, a vertical scroll bar and a horizontal scroll bar. So I can move around on this drawing page with a combination of the scroll bars and zooming in and out. On the left end of that slide bar is a minus sign. I click on that. Each time I select it, I zoom out. On the other end is a plus sign. Each time I select it, I zoom in. I'm going to zoom in until this is a little more visible on the video. Now, watch the mouse pointer carefully as I move it around the display. When I get onto this text, it changes to a text cursor instead of just a selection pointer. If I wanted to edit this text, I can move the mouse pointer till it becomes a text cursor, then select a point within that text box, and I can edit the text. By the way, as soon as I make a change, I can notice that there's another tool on the toolbar called Undo. Right next to it is Redo, but Redo is gray and ghosty because there's nothing to redo until I undo something. Each time I select the Undo tool, watch the words down here that I entered. Each time I select the Undo tool, it undoes, or it goes back to where my situation was before I doed it, or before I did that. If I undo something, the Redo tool is active, and so I can redo the last thing I undid. I can go back and forth there. So undo, redo, very important tools. Once again, I'm going to focus on this text box, and right now I have the cursor flashing between the D and the F in from. If I want to precisely position that cursor, I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard. I'm going to press the left arrow key, the left cursor control key. And notice each time I press that key, it jumps one space to the left or to the right. And if I had multiple lines here, I could use the up and down thing. Sometimes you have trouble precisely locating a spot just using the mouse pointer, and the arrow keys, the cursor control keys, can help you out. And now I'm going to tell you a couple of secret tricks that some of your best friends don't tell you. You probably know, if you've used any word processing or only text entry on a computer, you probably know that you can click and drag to select something. You can do that, but it's not necessarily the most precise way to do it. Let me show you a couple of tricks. If I position the text cursor on a word and I double click, click, I select the entire word. If I triple click, 1, 2, 3, I select an entire line or paragraph. Also, one more trick, if I have the text cursor in a text box and I want to select all of the text, I'm going to hold the control key down and press the letter A. So I select all the text. Why do I want to do that? Well, suppose that I don't like the font that I chose for that. Once I've selected any amount of text, I can go over here to the sidebar using this properties option, and I can change the font from to bold. It's a toggle, bold on, bold off, italic on, italic off, underline on or off, strike through on or off. I don't know why I do that on a greeting card. Or I can add a drop shadow on or off to my text. I can go up here and I can change the font, and I can click on this to change the font size. But there's a nice way to adjust the font size. Right here, increase font size. So if I click on that, each time I click on it, the font gets larger. Right next to it is decrease. This is kind of handy when I'm designing a card and I'm not sure exactly what font size will fill the space. There are other font style and text control things in the sidebar. Here's one that changes the font color. Here's one that uses a highlight color. Suppose that I wanted to highlight the word me. I double-clicked on the word me to select it, and then I can go highlight color and choose a highlight color. Can't really see what that's like while it's selected. So to deselect, I'll move the mouse away, click once, and now you can see the result of the highlighting. I don't really want to leave that highlighted, so what can I do? Well, I could go and reset it to something else, or I could undo what I just did. Another thing about this text box. Let me move the mouse pointer very carefully this time. If I get right into the text box, it becomes a text cursor, but if I get right on the edge of the box, you'll see it's a four-way arrow. If I click there, you'll see that I've selected the entire box, the entire text box. And when the cursor is a four-way arrow, I can click and I can drag. That means click the left mouse button and hold it down, and then move the mouse. So if I want to move that text box, I can click and drag to a new location. These grabbers allow me to change the size of the text box, but for now, I'm going to let the text box just be full of text. I don't want any space above or below these words. At this point, you should pause this video and then open up the text version of this tutorial and go through the steps one by one and practice a little bit the things that you've just seen. Once you've experimented with adding text, you probably will want to back up this video and replay some of this section. Unless you have a photographic memory, you may not have picked up all of the tips, and they'll make more sense once you've entered a little bit of text on your own. I've jumped a little ahead following the instructions in the printed version of the tutorial, and I've created a text box and I've added a bunch of text. And there's some suggested text in the tutorial. You can add any text you like. You notice that my text box is in the upper left part of the page, but you will recall, if you go back to your folded up example, that this part of the page, once this page is folded up, will be on the inside right of the card. The problem is, I need to turn this upside down so that it'll be right side up once I've folded the card. And it turns out that that's an easy thing to do with LibreOffice Draw. I have the text box selected. Let me review how I did that. I click away from the text, and if I click on the text, I just select text, and I don't want to select any part of the text with a text cursor. You remember the old selection tricks, but that's selecting text. I want to select the text box itself. So let me get the cursor right on that box, and now I've selected the text box. And that's what we're going to operate on using an option in the sidebar. This is where we change the characters when we selected text, but if we scroll down here on the sidebar ways, there's this option called position and size. One thing you might note if you look close at these sidebar listings, some of them have little pluses and some of them have minuses. If I select the plus sign, I'll expand that option. If I select the minus sign, that's a toggle, I'll reduce its size. So the position and size option is what I want. I don't want to shrink it. I want to expand it. And I want to use the rotation option. And I can spin this around manually, and you see what's happening. I'm just selecting that rotation tool and moving the left mouse button as I hold it down. But let's be more accurate than that. Let's go to this text box and let's enter 180. and press the Tab key. And now I have flipped that text over so that when I fold up the card, it'll be right side up. Next, we'll add a symbol shape to this card. You may recall way back near the beginning when we talked about the different display features that this left column contained drawing tools, and one of the drawing tools has a whole sub-collection of symbol shapes. Let's take a look at that a little closer. First, I'm going to scroll down with my vertical scroll bar because I want to work in this lower left area. Then I'll move the pointer over to the toolbar, and if you want to know what each of these do, you notice when you hover, it'll pop out a tooltip that'll tell you a little bit about each tool. If I look close, I'll see some of the tools have little bitty arrows. And if I click on that arrow on this symbol tool, it will open up a whole menu of different shapes. Just for fun, I'm going to use the smiley face. Now, to create a smiley face graphic, I have to use a click and drag trick. I'm going to click the left mouse button at the upper left and then drag down and to the right, and that drags out a symbol. And as soon as I'm done, the symbol, the graphic symbol, will remain selected. If I click away, I unselect it. To select a symbol, if it's not selected, I just move the mouse pointer over it, left click, and select it. And when a graphic object is selected, once again, we get these little grab points. We had similar grab points with a text box, but they weren't very useful. But they're a lot more useful on a graphics object. So if I click on this one and drag to the right, you notice that I make that guy wider. I didn't make him any taller, but I made him wider. Let me undo that. Go back to the original shape. If I grab one of the corner grabbers and I drag, you notice I can make this all kinds of variations of width and height. Well, let me undo that. This time, I'm going to hold the Shift key down and I'm going to move or drag a corner grab point, and now it fixes its aspect ratio. So if you want to resize a graphic object without changing its aspect ratio, hold the Shift key down before you click and drag. Once I have a graphic object selected, if I look over here in the sidebar, there are all kinds of properties available for me. In particular, I'm going to look at the area properties, and here it says fill color. And here's a little box that tells me what color that is. You can see it's blue, just like it's shown. If I click the little arrow on the right side of that color box, I get a color menu, and I can select any color from that palette, and I'm going to select yellow. And that immediately changes the fill color of my selected object to yellow. A little ways farther down, there's a line property area, and once again, in the line area, the line itself has a color, and I can select and change with my palette. I think I'll make the line black. There's also a line width option here, and I think I'm going to make this, just for fun, 2.3 points. If I don't like that, it's very easy to go back and choose a different line width. There are also different line styles, but I don't think I want the circle of my smiley face to be dash dot like Morse code. I'm going to leave it a continuous line, but you need to know about the line styles and the other options. If you look very close here at this smiley face, well, let me zoom in so we can see this better. Okay, I see the grab points around the outside of this graphic object, but I see this funny little circle right there. Let me grab that little circle and notice what happens to my mouse pointer. When I get right on it, it becomes a little pointer. Oops. I can change from a smiley face to a frowny face by dragging that little option. Let me undo that. I don't want this guy to be sad. Next, we'll add pictures to our card. This means that you'll have to be able to find pictures on your computer. If you're not familiar with how to use File Explorer to locate files on your computer, there is a tutorial for you in the schoolhouse. And you saw earlier how to get to this web page. Well, once you're in the schoolhouse, there's a place over here, Computer Tricks. And if you're using Windows 10, you can select a tutorial on Windows 10 File Explorer. There's similar tutorials for Windows 7 and 8. This is more than you want to know, but it includes what you must know to take control of the files on your computer. Again, if you're having trouble locating things and you're not familiar with using File Explorer in Windows 10, you must go through this tutorial or the equivalent. I'm going to add a picture that will end up on the front of my card, and that'll be in the lower right side of the card. I'm going to add a picture that looks a little different than the one in the example here. To add a picture, I will go to the toolbar and I will find Insert Image. And I'll select Insert Image. And then I will use the File Explorer to go to the file folder where the image is that I want to use. And I'm going to use this GLAD picture and select it and then select Open. Wow, that's a lot bigger than I wanted it to be. However, we can use the same trick we used to mess with a smiley face to mess with pictures or to adjust the sizes. Again, I want to make sure that my picture is selected, so I'll left click on it, and then with a double arrow mouse pointer I can click and drag, and I don't want to change the aspect ratio, so here's a quiz question for you. Do you remember a trick that we used to change the size without messing with the aspect ratio? The trick is hold the Shift key down and then use the drag option. And then I can drag the picture around to where I would like to have it. Once again, I'm going to zoom in a bit. And now that I'm zoomed in, I can see a little better the next steps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a line or a frame around this picture. So over in the sidebar, it's the same command I used on the smiley face object. Here's line. This time it says none, but I'm going to select continuous. And I'm going to select the color, black again, and I'm going to select the line width, and I'll choose one. If I choose too thick, it might look like someone's in mourning, so I'll play around with this a little bit until I get a line width that feels good. It also makes these pictures stand out a little more if you add a shadow, a drop shadow. So let's slide up here in the sidebar until we find the shadow option. If it's shrunk, you need to expand it. And we're going to enable a shadow. And you see immediately the shadow appears. And there are controls here to control what angle the shadow is at and what distance. We can make this shadow bigger, or we can make this shadow smaller, or we can make it just right. There may come a time when you want to position this picture more accurately than you can get just by mousing around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the sidebar down to the position and size option, and over here on the right side of that you may see this little tool. Tooltip says more options. I'm going to select that, and that opens up a new dialog box called Position and Size. And this dialog box allows us to really precisely locate things. We can choose an X position and a Y position, and you can choose the base point, the part of the picture that's actually going to be located at those X and Y dimensional positions. You can accurately control the width to a specific dimension. If you wanted that picture to be exactly 2 inches, you can make it exactly 2 inches wide. And if I say OK, those changes will be made. There's also precise control of rotation. This is more or less a duplication of what was in the sidebar. Slant and corner radius is something that you might want to explore a little bit. And the point is that you do have options for specifically or precisely controlling size and position of objects. We've done a lot of work here without saving our Office Draw file. Since we're practicing, I guess that's not so important, but if you really cared about this card that you're creating, you shouldn't put any more work or any more time into this without saving than you're willing to have to repeat. On the toolbar, you notice that there's a save option, and if there's a little sunburst, it means you've made changes since the last time you saved it. Well, this title is still untitled, which means we've never saved it. So we're going to click this save for the first time, and that opens up the Save As dialog box. Once again, you need a little experience with File Explorer because the Save As dialog box is very similar to a File Explorer dialog box, and this is where you'll set the path and select the folder and decide where you're going to put the file, and then you can name the file. As you see, I've been practicing a little bit when you weren't looking. I'll change the name of this version to Practice 3, and then I'll say Save. And once the save is complete, there's no longer a sunburst on that Save tool. Let me add one more picture to this card. This time I'm going to put a picture that's going to go inside the card, and I'm going to have to rotate the picture. I'm sure by now you're way ahead of me. Go to the toolbar, select Insert Image, find the image I want, open it. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit to see all of that. It's way too big, so I'll use the Shift corner drag resize, and I'll put this image somewhere inside this card, but it wants to be flipped over to end up right side up in the card. So I'll go here and I'll use the rotate option, rotate it 180, and there you have it. Once again, if I want to further refine this, I can select the object, I can use my sidebar to add a line around the margin or border and a shadow. I have all of these tools that you should practice. Well, by now you should have practiced making cards, maybe made several of them by now. You might even have printed them and folded them up. And perhaps you weren't completely satisfied the way you space things, and it may occur to you that trial and error is not the best way to drag these objects and text boxes around. to position them on your card. The printed tutorial has some suggestions for how you can create boxes, line them up, and use those as tools to more precisely position your text and objects on the card without having to waste a lot of printer ink or toner or paper experimenting. So take some time and review this section of the tutorial, and you'll find that your text and object placement improves considerably. I hope you found that this exploration of creating greeting cards using LibreOffice Draw has been useful. And if you found it useful and you like this approach to learning about LibreOffice, you may visit the Bristol Village Computer Club Schoolhouse, where you'll find more tutorials and more computer tricks, and you may also find some links to YouTube videos that you find interesting or perhaps amusing.